I have a question for you guys. Does coronavirus even matter? I'm going to tell you why I don't care about the coronavirus, number one. Number two, make sure you're subscribed to the channel to keep up with the latest videos that I try to pump out at record speed. Anyways, guys, if you look at the map here, you see a bunch of sauce all over this board of the United States, right? You would look at the junctions where there's a lot of coronavirus. This is a visual representation of what is going on, alright? Now, as you can see right now, our president is at approximately 45% approval rating. At the beginning of the coronavirus, or if we go just before it, we are looking at an approval of the exact same. His approval rating in New Year's 2020, before COVID, was 44.8. Now it's 44.9. So his approval rating is equal to what it was before the virus. And if you look over here, in the very beginning of his virus response, when nobody had basically died, it was at 47. But then he went down for a little while. There was riots, there was looting, everything, and then it went back up. Now, this just goes to show, does COVID really matter in the election? Well, not so much anymore. As you can see, the approval was the same at what it was a year ago, and, hundreds of thousands of people have died. Sure, 200,000 people have died. Does it really matter? As you can see here, his approval rating on the virus has not been a positive for him since early April of 2020. But the problem with this phenomena is that 42% of people still approve of his response to the epidemic or the pandemic, even though he's been universally slapped for it. Meaning that the vast majority of Republicans still support the president on specifically his weakest front in this election, which is the virus response. So this couldn't be that bad, right? Anyway, let's move on to the next thing. Well, people are going to die. Well, let's be realistic. The overall average of death, cumulative, is 0.5% to 1%, okay? Now look at this. Your odds of dying is less than 1% up until the age of 65-ish, right? So as you can see right here, there is no reason as to why you cannot simply say, I'm young, I won't die from this, alright? And the death rate is pretty low in these Western European countries when compared to the Latin countries or the the African countries, some of these Asian countries, India, they have a death rate closer to 4 or 5%, where we're only at the bare bottom of half of a percent. And I'll tell you what, yes, old people are at risk, but look at the old people population. If you are elderly, as in 70 to 80 years old, you have a risk of dying of 5%. If you are over 80 years old, as in you're super old, you're in the Nancy Pelosi, Harry Reid type of age, we are talking about a less than 10% chance of dying. So even at worst, this so-called deadly pandemic is only 10% fatality rate. This is not that bad. Again, we're looking at all these places where typically the trend is that over the last 2 weeks, the virus is getting less bad. It is decentralizing again. If you're outside of these places, if you're in Nye County, Nevada, if you're in Lincoln County, Nevada, if you're in Elko County, you don't have to worry about this thing at all. At all. And if you're under the age of 60 years old, you won't have a problem either, unless you're weak. Maybe you're retarded, maybe you have an autoimmune deficiency, whatever. But again, should people in Alaska have to worry about it? Should people in Brewster County? How about people in Terrell County? How about people in any, North Dakota? Do they have to worry about this virus? No, they don't. And you know why they don't? Because there's no virus. And they still want you to wear a mask. As you can see right now, the inflation isn't a problem. When we look at the quarterly growth of GDP, this is a huge problem for the United States. And nobody's talking about the economic contraction, other than maybe Donald Trump on occasion. And over here, as you can see right now, we are at a deficit of 33% GDP. Well, what is 33% GDP? And I'll explain to you what it is. As y'all can see right here, we are talking about a GDP that should have been at $23 trillion this year, but is barely at 19.6, okay? So we are at a huge deficit. We're losing trillions of dollars over this, certainly because of the lockdown. And as you can see, the national debt is increasing at a level nobody ever predicted ever before this year. And it is approximately what the debt would have been if Trump had a second term and did not have COVID. So you can see that this is really screwing with everybody's plan. The interest on our credit card is going up in terms of the national debt. Everything is getting worse. Corporate tax revenue, all this is barely coming up. We are at almost 50% GDP to spending growth, which would just make us a socialist country by that point. Things are getting worse out here, and it's only going to get worse if we close down again, okay? Now, as you can see, we have the unemployment, and it's very common to see people say it'll bounce back up. Yes, it will. You know, Donald Trump will say, oh, we're going to get 20% GDP in the third quarter. Yes, but we're down 30. So we're still down 10. You know what I mean? No, instead of growing at 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1, 3, we are at negative 33 because of this virus. Because of lockdowns, we have all sorts of countries shutting down, all sorts of businesses dying. When we're talking about whether it be irrelevant businesses like Sizzler, whether it be more relevant ones like Chuck E. Cheese, local franchises, small businesses, they're all dying. They're all dying. Disneyland is dying. Whatever. This is because of the big government lockdowns. And as you can see right here, we were trending upwards in GDP, and we're going to have a super V. But there was never needed to be a V. There never needed to be such a huge problem. And yet here we are. And as you can see, unemployment went up almost to 15% in April. This is a huge problem. This is recession, depression levels of unemployment that we had at peak times. And as you can see, by April, next to nobody had been dead from COVID, and yet everybody was getting unemployed, and that was because of the psychology of the country. Everybody cared so much about the virus to the point where they didn't live their lives in exchange for, you know, saving themselves or a grandparent who had a less than 10% chance of dying. And as you can see here, unemployment was doing very well. We were at 3.5% the last year on average, and now we are down to 8.4. But as you can see, people say, if you can't put the virus under control, like Biden says, then you can't get the economy back. Yes, you can get the economy back for the most part and still have the virus ravaging. As you can see, oh, well, 200,000 people have died. Well, of course, but look, the economy is getting better already. Unemployment is almost half of what it was at a mere 4 months ago, honestly. So we're recovering quick, but not as quick as I would like. And we have people like Donald Trump who are one of the only stalwarts against the lockdowns. But even yet still, we are looking at the approval ratings of the people that promote such a bad economy through lockdowns, through fear tactics, and authoritarianism. And their approval ratings are doing pretty well when you look at the governor of New York, when you look at the governor of California, the governor of Michigan, etc. We have draconian rules against travel and commerce to the point where people are losing their livelihoods. And sure, the government can print money for a while, but how long is this sustainable? We're not Venezuela, are we? So, I mean, this is not a sustainable path. And again, with no future in sight in terms of economic recovery for any particular reason, what makes us think that we can keep on living like this? As you can see right now, through the debt clock, if I were to show you what 2024 looks like if we keep up such a lockdown policy for whatever reason, we could look at our debt, and the debt is at $47 trillion. Everything goes up. We are so much worse off. Our revenue is going to be lower than what it was in 2017. Our GDP would be substantially lower. We would be inundated with debt, to be completely honest. And it is not a nice thing. It is not a good thing that we are living in such cases. But as you can see, this is beyond everybody's comprehension how bad the economy is right now, and was 5 months ago because of a superstitious virus. And again, the blame is on the president for whatever reason, even though it's from China. And China lied about the virus to the president for the first several weeks, which is why he never said anything when he first found out about the virus, because clearly he was fed false information, and that would have burned him twice over. So again, why do I not care about the virus? Simply put, I care about the several tens of millions of people that have lost their jobs due to it. I care about the small businesses that had nothing to do with spreading the virus reasonably and are over here losing their livelihoods about it. I don't care about the coronavirus as much anymore because not that many people are dead. You're talking about a fraction of a percent, and if you're not living or interacting with old people, you should be completely able to walk around, do whatever you want, because you're not going to die from the virus. Now, if you're vulnerable or old, stay in your house, all right, for the next several months, okay? But seriously, I'm not going to sacrifice my civil liberties for you to have peace of mind when I'm losing my job over it. Thank you for watching.